So I'm Tom Kendall and co-owner with this property with Zaia, caretakers of this property you might say. From this property we run a not-for-profit organisation called PermEco, Permanently Productive Ecosystems.
I'm Zaia Kendall, I'm Tom's wife. Who I am in relation to the property, well, I'm Tom's biggest support.
I have been brought up to be a resourceful person and living within your means. That's because I've come from a property that's in Western Australia that was limited in rainfall. We didn't have a surplus amount of economy, and so with that that's sort of a background for me to be resourceful within your region.
I did ski racing, slalom and giant slalom for several years, and that was the reason why I actually came to Australia, because I ended up breaking my ankle in the European season. Towards the late 90s, after I had my second child, I decided to teach myself web development and started teaching myself HTML and all the web languages. And I was then employed by seek.com.au as their first programmer.
What society has done is utilise scales of economy to be more productive, and that has actually only been able to be achieved by utilising resources, hence fossil fuels being overexploited, and to make the scales of economy happen. Permaculture is about living within your energy systems that nature provides you. And so I've designed that with permaculture as a design science, and so I've designed the property to function in that way. And Zaia's been my wife Zaia's been an integral part of that. So as properties get bigger, because they got using more fossil fuels to become bigger, whether it's financially, because financials comes from fossil fuels as well. As they get bigger, they actually push out more people of your community, so you lose community, particularly in the rural areas. It's more noticeable, but it does happen everywhere.
Why I chose a permaculture lifestyle, it's a really interesting pondering actually. Having kids is a big thing, because you do then realise, hang on a minute, what's happening with the planet for the future generation? How are my kids going to do the same thing that or can they do the same things that I used to do? I wanted simplicity. I was very, probably a bit fed up with what was going on out there. The constant need to achieve, the constant need to get more money, the constant need for more stuff. And I just wanted something more simple. I was interested in permaculture for a number of years before Tom and I met, and had been looking at it and sort of observing, and I wasn't really interested, but I never sort of made that step.
So what we're doing in a permaculture, which is polyculture, is not linear thinking. So you start thinking on a holistic thing. And I thought I was doing in Western Australia, but in hindsight I was probably just starting to move away from that linear thinking. And so there was a linear behaviour with that. And I see it in students that they're still really locked into a linear, because society's all linear. You just keep moving forward and you bring in all the things you need to it and leave all the pollution behind you as you go. And with a polyculture, you don't. Everything, there is no pollution. It's resource. If it is pollution, you've done something wrong. You've got to change. You've got to bring in another system to deal with that pollution.
In the party years, like we call them, the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, they're the party years where everything was just dandy and everyone could just burn through the fossil fuels and it was all great. In those years, we've actually educated and fostered very egocentric people, very selfish people that only think about themselves, and even if they have kids, they still think about them. We need to get away from that, and the only way you can step out of that is by starting to do things for other people, starting to do things for the environment, starting to do things for the good of everything.
I know that just by having this space here, I'm not going to save the planet, because it's very small on the scale of things. We're just 2 people out of near 8 billion people or whatever on the planet. We're not really going to save the planet by just making things all right for ourselves here. So I like to teach and give opportunity for others to appreciate what we do. The majority of our stuff is done by donation. Pay what you can afford. And what that's done is actually opened up opportunity for a lot of people that would just never be able to afford to do a PDC, because a PDC is pushing up near $2,000, you know, with the food included.
Resilience for me is something that we need to be able to take any event that comes our way in our stride without it majorly affecting our ability to exist. If you can do that, if you have the tools, and I mean by tools I mean the skills and the knowledge and the stamina to be able to actually do these things, then you can be resilient to anything, whether it's a pandemic or it's an earthquake or another major natural disaster, whether it's war, anything like that. It's not just the systems that you've already set up for yourself, but it's also your adaptability to whatever may come your way in order that you can deal with that. So you're constantly looking at new systems that you can put together, new inventions, I guess, or new things that you can create in order to make yourself more resilient to whatever comes your way. And whether that is something that you do as something happens. So for example, all of a sudden we might get a major natural disaster and we go, oh, we didn't count on this bit, let's put that in place for the next time. You know, so these things will teach us. With the pandemic, when the pandemic came along, nothing much changed for us. I mean, we can easily just keep on going. It's not a big issue for us.
Resilience means to me your capacity to be able to continue to function no matter whatever happens. And that's permaculture design's about designing for disaster. It doesn't mean designing to create disaster, it's designing so that you can function through disaster. And that's what permaculture design's about, is providing for all your needs within your space, whether it be your small property or your township or your community or your bioregion, whatever that might be, your where you get your resources from.
I would say to anyone who might be watching this as well is be patient with yourself. I mean, patience with everything around you is relatively easy compared to patience with yourself. You have to be really considerate of yourself and where you've come from and how you've developed, and you have to be patient with you. So, you know, don't beat yourself up too much when you don't recycle everything, or, you know, things don't really work the way you had envisioned it, because it is a journey and it can take time. And even though we don't have much time to get the planet better, still try and be as patient with yourself as you can.
Once you start understanding what synthetic fertilisers do to the soil, they actually shut down the soil, they kill the soil, and by killing the organism, so it wipes out a lot of the organisms, and every organism in its diversity is very valuable to a system to function. And then there's the other side of using synthetic fertilisers, is it's all done by fossil fuels, and it's tons and tons of fossil fuels to do that.
We're eating from this planet, we're breathing from this planet, the blood that goes through our veins is from this planet. Everything that we are is part of this planet, and we cannot separate the planet from ourselves. We cannot separate animals from ourselves, and we cannot separate other human beings from ourselves, because that is our detriment, that is our downfall.
You're always learning, and this actually one time was rainforest. This space here, you wouldn't have been able to walk through here 200 years ago. This is rainforest space. And here we are trying to put a vegetable garden in this space, and nature doesn't really want to do that. So if I really focused on doing a European style sort of garden, you know, like your normal traditional garden with broccoli and cabbages and all that sort of thing, it would be hard work, because this is not the climate for that. And so we actually moved away from those type of plants and we actually use more tropical plants, because you're set and forget. They look after themselves. You don't have to do so much hands-on. Because landscape functions best in its own right if you allow nature to do it, even though it might take a very long time, if you just leave it to do its own thing. So if we can study that a bit and maybe help to accelerate that process, to allow nature to do its thing.
Anyone who would ask me, what can I do to make this planet a better place? Plant. Just start planting trees. We need more trees. We have deforested this planet so much. We need more trees again, because deforestation is one of the biggest things that is causing this climate change, together with, of course, the other stuff that's going on.
So just behind me back here, some strawberries. I used to have to manage the strawberries quite a lot, because they'd take over the whole garden. They just keep going. Once the runners start going, bang, 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 instead of one strawberry bed, you've got 10 beds covered in strawberries. That doesn't happen anymore. It gets so hot here that they actually backpedal, even though I've got better soils, deeper soil structure, more water supply, even a bit more shade, and the strawberries go backwards. So I'm noticing a difference with it.
So it is changing, and we're trying to plant more shade in the gardens as well, so that we can still grow certain things, because there are a number of plants that now don't grow so well, especially in summer. We find now that in summer we basically revert back to this sort of stuff, which is Suriname spinach. That is a tropical vegetable, and that seems to be prolific in summer. There's still an urgency there to make things happen, and by sitting at home and meditating or reading books or being a keyboard warrior is not going to change anything on the ground. And if we want to fix these problems that we have on this planet, we really need to motivate ourselves to actually do something about it. I'm talking about actually getting in there on the ground, hands in the soil, and doing stuff and developing stuff. Plant a tree every day. I mean, that's not so hard, you know, just plant a tree. And that already goes so far to accumulate. Trees are the best accumulators of carbon, you know, the best processors of carbon. Plant a forest, go tree planting.
The Edo culture, I might say that wrong, but it's a Japanese culture. It's 400 or 500 years or something ago that the Edo culture was, and it's just a simple policy. It's not really on the resilience thing, but it's a sensible thing. Is when a child's born, they plant trees, and when that child gets married, there's the trees to build the house. You know, that's design. That's fantastic. You know, that's what we need to be doing, not growing trees to export to make money. That's just ridiculous. That's just, it's all back to front. Everyone should be planting trees for their next generation. And that to me, that's sensible design, and that's resilience. You always have what you need.
We're hoping to create more of a community on the property itself, so that we have more people around here that are our community. And this is really what the whole world needs to function on, or focus on, is to create smaller communities where they can provide for their own needs within that community and have their personal interactions. Back to that tribal living, which is the most sustainable living in the world. I am very aware that there's a lot of people that are living in smaller areas, and they might only have a balcony, or they might only have their inside space, or they might only have a little courtyard space. It is no excuse not to have diversity around you. You can still create diversity in whatever space you are. So get out there and do container gardening. Get some containers and just fill it up with all sorts of vegetables and little fruit trees. Have some little containers with small fruit trees. These days you can buy dwarf fruit trees, so there's no excuse not to have a miniature food forest all in pots in your environment.
this is a pretty good lifestyle. It's definitely not for many people, but many people probably really need to do it if we're going to save the planet. So yeah, this planet will be fine. We're going to save the human race on this planet. A lot more people have to embrace how we live. Hey, come on, shake it. You can do it. Come on, shake it. Come on. He's sitting wrong. Come on, shake it. Oh, come on.
Any sort of set roles for
Well, I'm the boss. No, there's no boss.
I'm the boss, but I've got a great advisor.